We are live. All right. It is Sunday night, the 24th, right? Say the 24th. We are, let's see, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm using my fingers. 5 days in to the Biden nightmare. And so far, in just a few days, he has managed to wipe out a big chunk of the Trump legacy. And there's a reason for that. The left uses the power that they get, whether they get it legally, by hook or by crook, however they get it, they use it to further their agenda. And our side just continues to play softball while the other side is serious. So we'll get into some of that tonight. But yeah, here we are, 5 days in. We've survived so far. And like I told you last Sunday, Trump would not be descending from a helicopter with a bazooka in one hand and a tank over his shoulder to save the day. So I'm sorry. I wish that could have happened or some other solution would have presented itself. And I realize also that many of our friends are still holding on and thinking that somehow, some way, we're going to prevent a Biden presidency. And I just got to start off tonight saying the chances of that are, as I told someone last night, 0.000000001%. And so let's get focused on what we can do. And there's a lot that we can do, and we're going to talk about that tonight. And I want your suggestions as well. So please fire up that chat on your Facebook page. Ask your questions. I got family sitting around reading those questions and going to toss them to me when I get done with my ranting for a little while. So let's start on a couple of major items. First and foremost, because I realize presidency is what's on everybody's mind, and we will talk about that. Impeachment is on everybody's mind. We'll talk about that. But the one that, to me, is still at the forefront is the COVID crackdowns, because that continues to be where the rubber meets the road. That continues to be the main place that our liberty is affected, the main place that our families are affected in a negative way. It continues to be the worst public policy decision-making in the history of mankind. I mean, this continues to be just a colossal error after error after error. And so let's hit a few of those. I mean, the one everybody's talking about and, once again says rules for thee but not for me is Joe Biden issuing an executive order on day one that everybody's got to wear a mask, even though they do absolutely no good. And all they do is create tension between us, suffocate people, and cause all kinds of problems for people. He still mandates it now on all federal property. Will somebody get me a towel? This is a very wet table here that I'm dealing with. I don't know about where you're living, but we have rain in Dripping Springs. Not a common occurrence, but glad to have a little bit of it, and pretty nasty weather, but it's January. What do we expect? Anyway, he issues this executive order saying if you're on federal property, you have to wear a mask. Doesn't matter. No exemptions, no ADA, no, it doesn't matter what your situation is or what you happen to be celebrating, unless you're the president of the United States, you and your family get to ignore this mandate, of course. Thanks, bud. And so, of course, he was videoed without his mask on at the Lincoln Memorial with his family. They're all without masks. Once again, the hypocrisy is obvious. Continues to be rules for thee, but not for me. And I continue to be shocked that people are not put off by this any more than they are, and that they're not just incredulous. And we don't see that and go, okay, the very people that are enforcing these ridiculous, not just silly, I mean ridiculous mandates on us don't believe that the mandates are necessary based on their actions. It's been that way since April of last year. For the last 9 months, the very people that have been dictating to you to radically change your life, to lose your savings by shutting down your business, to force you to wear a Chinese face diaper everywhere you go, the very people telling you to do that are not following the rules themselves. So they don't honestly believe that COVID is going to kill everybody, or else they would follow their own rules because they'd be worried about themselves and their families. That goes for Greg Abbott and all the pictures we've seen of him having parties and going to football games and doing things without masks while he initially told us to all wear them, and now still allows local entities to do that because he hasn't had the guts of Ron DeSantis to say, no, even you local entities cannot have mask mandates. That includes Gretchen Whitmer and all the other governors that broke their own rules, they and their family. Anyway, I don't want to go off on that too much tonight, but here it is. Now at the highest level, the President of the United States also engaging in the hypocrisy and ordering us to do things that he is not going to do. Even though he, quite hilariously was wearing his mask in all kinds of, television situations when he's not anywhere near anybody. It's just complete virtue signaling, and it's just lunacy, and I refuse to participate in it. I was thrilled, though, that President Biden said we cannot change the trajectory of the virus over the next few months. Who's been saying that for nearly a year? Caleb Hall and Daniel Horowitz, and who was the first one? Alex Berenson, the New York Times reporter, that said COVID gonna COVID, and you're not gonna stop COVID from COVIDing. It's gonna happen. The virus is going to virus. And none of these non-pharmaceutical interventions have made a lick of a difference, but they've destroyed lives and created this mass cult in our country that so many are worshiping. And not only do they worship in this cult, they literally want to banish you from polite society and from society in general. I mean, literally not let you participate in life unless you join the cult with them and worship the mask. So it continues to be ridiculous. But at least Biden admitted, hey, nothing we can do. So stop the nonsense then. If you're finally realizing that the numbers are the same everywhere, regardless of government intervention, then stop the government intervention. And that goes for our local leaders as well. And I know I pick on him a lot, but it's my state, and he's ruined my state over the last year. So Greg Abbott, same thing. He continues to let businesses die in Texas. He continues to create friction among our people, animosity and tension between our people over this ridiculousness. And generally, he continues to fail to be a leader, willing to do the right thing, willing to admit that he was wrong, and willing to reverse course. He says no more lockdowns, while a tremendous amount of our state continues to be in lockdowns and continues to shut down businesses and continues to tell businesses how they can operate. I was refused service at my favorite local restaurant the other day because of somehow I made it to my table without putting a mask on, and they wouldn't even serve me. Because they're being bullied. It's not that I don't think the people at the restaurant are foolish enough to believe all this nonsense. I think they're smart enough to know if everybody in the restaurant is sitting down to eat and doesn't have their mask on, then walking from the door to your table is not going to. It's stupid to say put your mask on there, but not when you're at your table. They know that. They're common sense people, but they're being bullied by TABC and other state bureaucrats. And all of that is at the feet of Greg Abbott. It is 100% his fault and no one else's. And those chickens will come home to roost, I promise you. There will be a Republican primary, and there are millions of us that will not forget the lives that have been lost, the livelihoods that have been destroyed, the businesses and the relationships and all the things that these control freaks like Greg Abbott have created. On another good news front, have I said any good news yet? Well, the good news that Biden actually admitted we couldn't do anything to change the trajectory of the virus. They're also, it is so shameless. They have no shame. Immediately upon Joe Biden being sworn into office, immediately CNN takes down their death counter. They're no longer everybody's dying. Now all of a sudden the crisis is over simply because Biden is in office. They're already changing the testing, not protocols. What's the word I'm looking for? The number from like 45 to 25 on the testing for what that I'm forgetting whatever that measurement is. Bottom line is they have rigged these tests for the last 9 months to make it where everybody's testing positive virtually, so that they can Trump run this thing up and make everybody panic. And we've said for months, the scientists have said, and then people like me have repeated it, that it's a ridiculous testing protocol. It's not protocol. Somebody help me. Does anybody know what the word is I'm looking for? It's the PCP. The in the test for COVID, there is a parameter there that is specifically about. It's what determines whether your test comes back positive or negative, and it has to do with how many of the. I'm not remembering the terminology. Bottom line is it's a scam, and so the scientists have said for a long time you've got that number way too high. You've got to bring that down. Anyway, bottom line is they're doing it now that Joe Biden is in office. The very thing that the scientists have been calling for. The threshold. Thank you. But what is the amplification cycles? That's it. Thank you, Yvette. I appreciate that. Somebody knows what they're talking about.
It's the PCC cycle.
The PCC cycles, or PCR. PCR cycles. There you go. It's been a while since I looked at all this stuff. That was like June of last year. Okay. Anyway, bottom line is they're now changing all of that. So, hey, you know what? The good news is maybe having to deal with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris continue the massive move towards leftism and Marxism may somehow, some way get rid of some of the COVID crackdowns because now they want to look good. They want to look like they've solved the COVID crisis. But see, that's going to conflict with their desire to control things. So I think what they'll probably do is they're going to change all this stuff to make it look like Joe Biden solved COVID, and then they're going to come out with a new strain of COVID that now requires Joe Biden to save the world again, and in order for him to save the world, he has to shut the world down. That's kind of what I think is going to happen. We'll see if it goes that far. Okay, yes, more good news. The good news is that the health of the nation is now in the hands of someone who just a few years ago was considered mentally ill in virtually every health textbook and every medical school in the country. So we have a dude who thinks he's a girl and dressing like a girl and looks like this really, really awful mix of Barbie and Ben Franklin. I don't know if you've seen his pictures. Yeah. So if you've seen, if you're unfortunate enough to live in Pennsylvania, you've had to watch this dude every day be the one that reported the COVID numbers and told everybody how to live their lives. This man that thinks he's a woman, therefore is mentally ill, and every medical journal and medical school in the country used to agree with that just until a few short years ago, until political correctness got a hold of him and convinced them to change that. So anyway, there's some great news for you. He's the number 2 person in America on healthcare. Another reason that the federal government should have nothing to do with healthcare, zero. The federal government has no constitutional authority to have any say with regard to your healthcare. So we should abolish that department, and that's one of the things we'll do if we ever get to have a convention of states, which we will. The momentum there is huge. Okay, why? No, impeachment. Let's cover that real quick because I know there's questions about impeachment. The articles of impeachment will be officially delivered. The solemn ceremony of the impeachment managers walking across the rotunda from the House chamber to the Senate chamber will take place tomorrow, and they will deliver these completely bogus impeachment articles based on a complete rewriting of history, all a pack of lies, all in an effort not just to besmirch Donald Trump and hopefully in their dream world prevent him from being able to run for office in 4 years, but to besmirch you and me and anyone that supported Trump. And so that's the effort going on tomorrow. Constitutionally, this is an absolute fraud, complete abuse of the system. This is nowhere in anyone's imagination in the founding era was there the idea that you would impeach presidents after they left office. This is ludicrous. In fact, let's just read the impeachment clause and remember that this is specifically for removing someone from office. Here's the impeachment clause. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Even if Donald Trump incited a riot, which he did not, and the facts absolutely prove that, but even if he incited people to attack the Capitol in some made-up insurrection that these people are claiming happened, when that is not what happened on that day. But even if that was true, your chance to impeach him and remove him from office ended at noon on January 20th. You cannot remove from office someone that is no longer in office. And so now these guys like Chuck Schumer are making this up as they go. And you listen to what he said the other day. He said the founders would have never created a system where a president could commit crimes and then leave office and not be held to account for those crimes. What a dunce. I mean, what an idiot. He has no clue what the Constitution actually sets up in separation of powers and this very, very unique exemption to actually being the court and the executioner of laws. Remember what separation of powers does. The Congress makes law. It does not enforce that law. It is certainly not the court whenever someone breaks law. So if someone breaks the law and they are not impeached while in office, they are absolutely still subject to prosecution under that law. And that could easily be done by whoever thinks that Trump did these things. They can go to a grand jury and indict this guy outside of the whole impeachment process. But if Congress can turn around and go after anybody that's ever served in any office and prosecute charges against them to try to prevent them from ever serving in office, even after they're long gone, they are now the court. They are now the executioners. So they're now the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, all three in one. Nobody thinks that's how the Congress was designed. This is simply a power grab by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi in a misguided attempt to hurt their political enemies. So it's just ridiculous. And by the way, if a president or any officer is impeached, let's just go to that clause real quick. By the way, what I just read you was Article 2, Section 4. Let's go over to Article 1, Section 3. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation, and when the President of the U.S. is tried and Chief Justice shall preside, no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of two-thirds of the members present. So don't forget, got to be 67 senators agree to convict President Trump. Not likely that'll happen, but not impossible. I mean, when you have some of these senators, actually Republican senators, saying that they would support the impeachment of the president, first of all, I can't wait for their primary, but also, again, not upholding the spirit of the Constitution, actually, absolutely abusing it out of their hatred for Donald Trump. And yes, I'm talking about Republicans that hate Donald Trump. Next clause says, judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. So that's where they're at, what they're after. They want to not remove him from office. They want to prevent him from running for office in the future. But you have to do the first part. You got to remove someone from office before you can then say you can't run for office in the future. You can't just skip the first part, and that's what they're attempting to do here. And Chuck Schumer's completely wrong. That doesn't mean somebody that's in office could break the law and then resign and be off the hook, because the next part of the clause, but the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. In other words, if somebody breaks the law while they're in office and they're not impeached or removed, then afterwards the local folks, wherever they committed the offense, they can indict and go after them. I'm not suggesting that the politicians in D.C. should jump on that bandwagon. They're going to do it, I'm sure. But anyway, that's the whole impeachment thing. It's a farce. What you're going to hear on the news in the next few days, you're going to hear people like me saying this is an abuse of the Constitution, and you're going to be shocked to find us teamed up with left-wing law professors from Harvard like Cass Sunstein and Turley and Dershowitz. I mean, they've all said the same thing I'm saying, that this is absolutely ludicrous. But then you're going to find these never-Trumpers that are also members of the Federalist Society actually siding with Chuck Schumer. It boggles my mind. They hate Trump so much that they are willing to actually, in my opinion, sell out their principles and go against what they absolutely know the Constitution does not allow for. And they're all using this one example in 1876, and you've heard me talk about 1876 a lot. What a ridiculous year in American history. That was the election that had three states in multiple slates and couldn't figure out who president was and had a commission. The whole reason Ted Cruz said we did this before, we can do it again. Anyway, earlier that year, there was he was either Secretary, I think he was Secretary of Defense, that was about to be impeached. There were articles of impeachment drafted in in the House. And so he said, well, I'm going to quit. I'm going to resign so they can't impeach me. So he resigned the day before they were going to present the impeachment articles. And so they decided, well, we're going to get him anyway. And they went forward with the impeachment. And the Senate said, we can still convict him of impeachment. So that one example is what everybody's trying to use and say, that means it's constitutional. Well, I'm sorry, but if you want to point to things that Congress has done, like support slavery and all the other ridiculous things Congress has done at its worst over the years, you can't say just because they did something wrong that makes it right. It didn't change the Constitution. It didn't authorize it in the Constitution. The question has never been litigated. The Supreme Court's never answered this question. So if Chuck Schumer manages to get 17 Republicans to be his fools, his useless idiots, that's a term of art. I'm not calling them idiots. Term of art from, was it Stalin that referred to some of the people as useful idiots because they were basically used to be the front men for the movement? Anyway, if Schumer manages to get 17 Republicans to be his useful idiots, and he'll get at least, I would say, 5. I mean, Mitt Romney fits the definition. Murkowski, same thing. Maybe Collins. You never know with her because I think she does have, while she's really a moderate or even a liberal Republican, she does tend to have a very strong sense of ethics and a code of conduct. So I'm not sure she would vote to convict. But even McConnell has hinted that he might be willing to vote to convict. So, there's a few, but 17, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And I'm glad we have the drawn-out process because the longer this takes, the more people are going to see through it. The more it's going to become obvious what they're really trying to do. And it also allows the emotion to drop a little bit. As Mike Pence said, and refer back to his response to Nancy Pelosi when this first came up, the idea of the 25th Amendment before impeachment, is he said we need to lower the temperature in the room. And so that can kind of happen over the next month or so as they play this process out. And when the Democrats figure out they've got complete control of the federal government now, they're going to be more busy with their agenda moving the ball their direction and possibly lose some of the momentum for the impeachment. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the impeachment. What did I not cover? Okay. The left is winning. This is really what I've already spent 20 minutes here, but this is actually a pretty easy answer. Why the left is winning, and why we are losing, and how we can turn it around. 2 reasons the left is winning. Number one, they use power immediately when they get it, whether they get it by hook or crook, or whether they get it legitimately. They move the ball down the field. They have the opportunity. On the other hand, we do the opposite. We are afraid to advance our agenda even when we get power honestly, even when we win with a national mandate. I don't know what it is about Republicans that are more concerned about appearing to be fair. That seems to be more, that's the highest value to these elected Republicans. Appearing to be fair is more important to them than saving the country. Appearing, again, not being fair, not being just, which is the important word to use here, but appearing to be fair so that when they go on a talk show, they look like they're benevolent and magnanimous. That's for some reason in their minds, and I don't know where that happened. I don't know what caused that, but that seems to drive them, and so they don't use power when they get it. Trump was different in that he started moving the ball down the field very quickly, and that's why they hated him. He went a lot faster than any of them wanted to go. So, I mean, that's the number one reason why we're losing and they're winning. However they get power, they use it immediately, move the ball down the field. And then people react to that and say, we don't want that, and they turn around and elect Republicans, and then Republicans sit there with their hands folded and do practically nothing, or they give lip service to some part of our movement, or they maybe have one little victory here or there, but very little because they want to look like they're not moving too fast, and they want to look like they're being quote unquote fair. And then of course what happens? The other side moves the Overton window, and then we just put a stop to it while we're in power, and then they get power again and they move it even further. That's why America has declined so much and moved so far to the left in such a short amount of time. meaning in just a few decades. And so that's got to change. That's the number one reason. We'll talk about how to change that. And then the second reason is, I mean, you're not going to like this, but they do the hard work. I mean, they are relentless about organizing, about being persistent, about dedicating their lives to what they believe in, and actually spending their lives and their money doing this. So they are dedicated to their cause, and we have been for too long fat, lazy, happy, enjoying the blessings of liberty, and not having to pay the price. We've been living on the fumes of what previous generations were willing to do. And so they are being revolutionaries. They are motivated, passionate, scratching and clawing, doing whatever it takes. They get beat, no problem. They come back, and they keep coming back, and they keep coming back. And that's been their modus operandi for years. And we're over here literally, I'm not kidding when I say fat, happy, and lazy, and just enjoying our freedom. And I know not you. If you're watching this, you've probably been active and been involved. I mean, as a nation, those on the those that love the Constitution, those that love freedom, and say that they love freedom, and say that they want freedom of religion, and say they want to save babies, and all of those things. Those 80, 90 million people in America, they've been spoiled. We've been spoiled for too long. So we haven't answered the call to get involved and do the hard work. It's hard to win, folks. I couldn't help but think about that last night as we were watching the UFC fights, which we love watching every weekend. And so glad that Dustin Poirier won. Man, now we are we enjoy watching Conor McGregor, and Rhett's over here starting to cry now because he was rooting for McGregor. But we were so glad Poirier won. It was one of the best fights ever. But what I noticed was that hey, Tim, remind me about that. And yes, I'll speak to the 1871 thing. What I noticed in all the videos leading up to these fights last night was that all of these guys at the top of the game, they kept using the terminology of, I put in the work. Poirier always says it's paid in full. I earned this. I worked my tail off for this. McGregor, same thing. Whether it's with his businesses or with fighting or whatever, he talked about the hard work that it takes to be successful, to be effective. And so I was just thinking about that last night as I was watching those interviews with those guys and listening to that. That's what we're missing in many ways on our side. We're not enough of us are willing to put in the hard work. Now, there are some patriots out there that they are in the trenches day in and day out. They put their money up. They put their reputation on the line. They literally are willing to give up their lives, fortune, sacred honor, day in and day out. I think of my friend Tracy Dean, who I got to see last night at Cigars and Sermons with Doug Giles, and Tracy exemplifies that. Ever since I've known him, 22 years now that I've known him, 23 years now, he has always been willing to sacrifice, to work hard, and I mean physical work, financial work, 19, 20, 21-hour days, day in and day out. He's one of the few on our side that fights like the left does. And that's what we need more of. We have got to be willing to get in the trenches and fight day in and day out, sacrifice. That was another term used in many of those videos last night as you watch these guys train day in and day out and talk about without the sacrifice, you don't get the reward. And it all goes back to Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine said, if you want to enjoy the blessings of liberty, you must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it. We have to be willing to undergo the fatigues of fighting for this stuff, and we just haven't been willing to do that. So the other side, two things. The other side does that we have not done up to this point, and that's what I'm hoping we can challenge ourselves to do this year in 2021. Number one, they use power when they get it. They move the ball down the field. And number two, they work hard. They put in the effort. They put in the money. They put in the sacrifice to further their cause. So we have got to do the same thing. When we get power, we've got to use it. And we've got to be willing to put in the hard work to get that power. And when I say get power, should not conjure up negative feelings in you. What I'm talking about is the power to lead. I'm talking about winning elections. I'm talking about being in a position to exert influence. Those are good things, and we need good people to be in those positions. of having that power and then using that power to defend liberty and further our cause. That's how we turn this thing around. And that begins at our local level, as I say every week. That means you need to gain power in your local community. You need your friends and family and church members to start winning school board elections, city council elections, county commissioner elections, so that you have power at the local level to then exert influence over the COVID fascism, over elections and what voting system will be used in that county. All of these things come back to who put in the hard work over the last 5 years to be in a position to make the decisions that exert that power. And that's where we have to switch our mindset. We can't just think about the presidential election. If you're one of those people that is saying, well, there's no point in participating anymore because elections don't work and they're going to steal the elections, you're only thinking about the presidential election of 2020, and you've got to start thinking about the local elections in your community this year in 2021 and how you can ensure election integrity, win those elections, and then ensure election integrity for your state and moving on down the line. So there are plenty of things we can do. First thing we got to do is make the personal commitment. I'm willing to put in the time, the effort, the money. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. You wouldn't be on this tonight. You wouldn't be spending your Sunday evening listening to me rant if you weren't already one of those people. But I hope you'll share that message with your friends and family, and I hope it'll give you a little bit of the motivation to put in even more of your time and money and effort. So let's address a couple things that happened this week with the Biden presidency already. Like I'm saying, they immediately used their power. Joe Biden, in a matter of hours, through his executive orders, wiped out, I don't know what percentage. I've heard different people say half the Trump legacy, 75% of the Trump legacy, like that, using executive orders. Because so much of what Trump did was through executive orders, he was able to wipe out a lot of that very quickly. And, I mean, just measuring a couple of these things, the Keystone Pipeline, I mean, immediately killed 11,000 jobs, 8,000 of them, union jobs. A union that endorsed him, by the way. So there you go. You're getting what you deserve. But the rest of the country is not going to get what they deserve. The rest of the country now, we're going to, instead of being energy independent, by shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, by stopping fracking, all the things that he's doing and attempting to do, we will once again become energy dependent instead of energy independent. And think about what happens with the Keystone Pipeline oil that we would have been able to use as, I forget the senator's name from Missouri, not Hawley, but the other one. Anyway, as one of the U.S. senators already said today, where do you think, who's going to get that oil? China and other countries are going to be able to get that oil. So, of course, Joe Biden's all for that, right? But it's bad for us. So immediately trying to kill the energy industry that Trump helped to explode in the last 4 years. Killed women's sports with the stroke of his pen. Going to allow men, grown boys, to go into the bathroom of our daughters. So if you're in a public school and you're not at the next school board meeting demanding that rule not be implemented at your local school, you're a fool for not doing that, or pulling your kid out and getting them out of that public school and getting them somewhere where they don't let men go into the bathroom with our daughters. It's disgusting. And the President of the United States just said that he wanted that to happen and signed an executive order requiring that to happen all across this country. And then same for sports, that we're going to basically, kill girl sports by saying that guys can go compete in it. All you got to do is say, I feel like a woman today. I mean, that's all it takes. And now you get to go race against the girls and get your trophy and feel good about yourself somehow because you beat women when you're a man. It's just nuts. It's just nuts. So he did that the first day. Celebrated the murdering of babies. Celebrated the death of 60 million children in our country. And celebrated Roe v. Wade and with the stroke of his pen took away a lot of the pro-life actions that Trump had made. Complete immigration disaster within a few hours of his presidency. The ICE, former head of ICE, already talking about, the former head of the Border Patrol already talking about the danger that Biden has already put us in just a few days. Not just with these caravans coming up, but all the other things with the wall and everything else. So just a horrendous. That just touches on a few of them. There's a whole lot more that he did, but I don't want to be focused on that all night. Probably the one that bothers me in my gut the most because it's my passionate issue is the 1776 Commission. Immediately upon being sworn in, they took down the 1776 Commission from the website of the president and started lambasting these guys and saying that somehow actually wanted to teach American history and the truth about American history and the Constitution and all these things, that's evil, that's wrong. So this is a 1619 Project president. I mean, he is all about race baiting. He is all about dividing us. This is a Marxist mentality. He is sold out to that because those are the people that got him elected. And unfortunately, look forward to more of that over the next 4 years from the federal government without question. We continue to silence these doctors, and I appreciate whoever sent me this email. I'm going to copy this link right away and put it into the chat. If you have not been on their website, americasfrontlinedoctors.com is a fantastic resource. These are the folks, you probably saw their press conferences when they have been in Washington, D.C. They brilliant doctors that have been on the front lines. They've been the ones treating the COVID patients. They've been the ones from the beginning saying, why are we not using hydroxychloroquine and these other things that we're using, and they're working, and they cost next to nothing. And trying to make the pharmacy associations and the boards and the medical boards and all that allow doctors to prescribe these things. Anyway, fantastic organization, great information on the vaccine. Check out that website. It's just a fantastic tool, americasfrontlinedoctors.com. And thank you for sending that to me. I just saw that email right before we went live. Okay, let's see. February 11th is our last February date, and actually we don't go back until close to the end of March, right, for our constitutional defense course. So if you want to get trained anytime soon, this is the class you need to get into. February 11th, we will be doing one of our constitutional defense courses in Nevada, and you only have 48 hours to register. We've got a few seats left. We're full up on February 7th. That one's closed, but February 11th still has some room in it, and you've got to register by midnight on Tuesday night. So you've got 48 hours roughly. What is that actually? 52 hours. 49 hours and 49 minutes from right now is what you have to get registered. So really would love to have you with us. We've already got over 100 people. Well, actually, I guess almost 300 people that'll be out there that week with us, and would love to have you be there. I'm telling you, the safety issue is not just about the riots in the streets and the BLM and Antifa thing. We have been passionate about this for nearly a decade. Violent crime in our streets in every community across the country. It's just part of what happens in a society like this when you move away from God. And you better be ready to defend yourself and your family. And if you have not had professional training, please go with us and get that training. It's not enough to just grow up shooting on the ranch and all that. You need to get this kind of training so that you know how to deal with the situations. Most of it's mental. I mean, just getting the mental awareness and ability to make that decision in the moment, having already thought these things through. We also do a lot of Constitution training in the evenings. It's really, really fun, and it's great fellowship. You can wear a mask if you want. Very few people do. Most everybody there, we let everybody make their own decisions, and it's wonderful, wonderful fellowship. We pack that classroom out and have a great time, really enjoying each other's company. I think that's one of the things that's wrong with the country right now, why people are so at each other's throats. We don't have fellowship. We don't have camaraderie. We don't have the opportunity to just visit with people like we do at these classes. So we'd love to have you be a part of that. February 11th is the start date. You can fly in that day or drive in that day. We start that night at about 6, Trey, is that right? About 6 o'clock on the 11th. And then you can do either the 3-day class or the 5-day class. And it's about a tenth of the normal cost. So 3-day class is only $99. That is normally a $1,000 class with Front Sight. The 5-day class is $199. That is normally $2,000 with them. So you get it for 10% of the normal price. And it helps Patriot Academy. So you should want to go for yourself and for Patriot Academy and the things that we're doing. So check that out at our Constitutional Defense site. And I believe I saw your link go flying by in the chat. Okay, first question I'll answer tonight. I saw several people asked about this. Is America a corporation after the 1871 Organic Law, Organic Act, whatever you want to call it? I think the official name is the Organic Act of 1871. I have been getting this question so much lately. I don't know why this idea has gotten so much steam in the last few days and weeks, but man, I mean, tons of people are asking me about this whole, is America a corporation? Does that mean that and here's the way basically that the line goes, that in 1871 a law was passed that incorporated the United States of America, set aside the Constitution, adopted a new set of rules and corporate bylaws for the United States of America, and that's why nobody follows the Constitution anymore. Short answer, no. That is absolutely, positively, 100% false. That is not what the Organic Act of 1871 did. We are not a corporation. We are not under something other than the Constitution, other than the fact that we're under the Courtstitution, which means we're living based on what the U.S. Supreme Court says the Constitution says. But we talk about that all the time in our Constitution classes. But this 1871 law did not do any of that. This is a myth that floats around the internet every, I used to, I would only hear it like a couple of times a year. But lately, man, it's all over the place. And I think part of it is we're just desperate for some explanation as to why our country's falling apart. I think that's why we're giving so much credence to these ideas out there, these myths, these I mean, in some cases, just flat out conspiracy theories, because we're just so frustrated and we're going, okay, how did we get to this point? There has to be, the Rothschilds have to be the ones that caused all of this. Somehow, some way, the Rockefellers or some rich group is reaching out from the grave and destroying our nation. That's why I think those things take hold so much right now. So the truth is, there's always been, wealthy people in a society that want to control other people. And so there's always been, bankers, business leaders, publishers, whoever, that exert their influence. Just like I said earlier, power in and of itself is not a bad thing. And of course, bad people would love to have power to do bad things, and good people should want to have power to prevent bad things, so that we can do justice, so that we can obey biblical commands. And so, oftentimes we will try to, we feel better if somehow there's a smoke-filled room somewhere with these powerful people rewriting the laws of America, and we have no say or control over that. Because somehow it takes away our responsibility, takes away our blame. Remember what I said, we've been fat, happy, and lazy all these years while the left was hungry and they were in the trenches and they were fighting. And I don't know, Trey, were you out here when I was talking about the UFC from last night?
I missed it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying it's just so, I learned so much watching those videos of how all those guys talked about work ethic, and I put in the work, and I'm here because of the hard work and the sacrifice and all that. I was just talking about how the left does that. They work hard. They're relentless. And our side, man, we just living off the fumes of previous generations. So anyway, that's what typically happens with a lot of these theories out there. But just don't waste your time getting caught up in all that. Do the hard work, the blocking and the tackling. The 1871, by the way, all that was so here's the thing. D.C., Washington, D.C., it had to do with D.C., not with the federal government itself. So the whole kind of sordid history with the District of Columbia, the Constitution sets up the District of Columbia. So it literally it doesn't say District of Columbia because it wasn't named yet, but it defines the area as the seat of the federal government and a special place that would not be in a state, not be part of a state, and not be a state. And the problem was you had disenfranchised people that were living in D.C. that couldn't vote because it wasn't a state. It was governed by basically a congressional committee. And so what the Act of 1871 did was it incorporated D.C., just like you incorporate a city. So when you hear those words incorporated, when a city is incorporated, that doesn't mean the city is now a corporation like you would start a business that is a corporation. It means that it's incorporated. A better definition of that word would be it's organized, if you will, under these Constitution or under a set of rules, all right? And so D.C. was incorporated and to become an actual city, and not just a city. It actually pulled in all these other areas around there that Virginia had taken back. And so there was just kind of this power struggle back and forth. It didn't even last but I think 3 or 4 years, and then there was another congressional act, I think in 1774, that even changed that incorporation. And over the years, it's changed. Even in 69, I'm trying to remember the years, but like 69 and 71 and 73, there were additional changes. At one point, it was almost more like a county commissioner's governing body over D.C., and then I think the last time was 70. I want to say it was 73 that it actually set up D.C. with a council, with a city council and a mayor, and then it's been pretty much the same ever since. So anyway, that's what that whole congressional act has to do with. The reason people say that it's the U.S. becoming a corporation is because of the way that it's worded at the beginning of the statute, and it says something about the United States, corporation is a corporation and B is this and is what it's actually saying is the United States and all of its corporations, entities, departments, all of those things. It's defining what the United States is. All of our unincorporated states, our territories, all of those things. And just to give you an example, I think there's 15 or 17 federal corporations. And think about some of the ones you know, right? What is your bank account protected by? Like if your bank goes under, what is the entity that would give you, it used to be 100,000. I think it's now 250,000 total from any particular bank if it's lost in a bank. That's a fun one. Let's see who can name that the fastest in the chat, Trey. That entity that you're going to name is a federal corporation. The post office is a federal corporation. There's literally like 15 or 17 of them, and they're kind of like departments, but they're technically incorporated as corporations. So anyway, that's the I saw somebody got it right. I don't know if it's Christine got it first. Yep. All right, good for you. There you go. Yep, FDIC. And I'm trying to remember what the acronym stands for. The Federal Depository Insurance. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, I hope that answers that question. I don't mean to be I hope I didn't come across dismissive or in any way dismissive, because I get it. I know that you want something to hang on to and say this is the reason why. It wasn't our fault. But it was our fault. We let our country go. The church failed the nation. The church stepped out, let the left have it. And so when the left takes over, they destroy everything they touch. I mean, that's Dennis Prager's saying, and I think it's absolutely true. The left destroys everything it touches. Families, entities, schools, nations, journalism, you name it. When the left gets a hold of it, they destroy it. And we've let that happen in our nation. It doesn't mean we can't take it back. It doesn't mean all is lost. If we don't take it back, still going to do my duty. I'm going down fighting. I don't know about you, but I do see a window of opportunity to take it back. I think that they have gone so far, so fast. A lot of America is going to come back to us, and they're going to be looking for answers. And so part of the reason I'm just going to be a broken record again tonight. The number one thing you can do if you want to make a difference is start a local class in your living room or at your church. Either do Constitution Alive or Biblical Citizenship in Modern America or one of our other classes. What that will do is it will give your friends and family fellowship. It will give you a chance to see that you are not alone. And it will give you a chance to find truth and give them a chance to find truth, to seek truth, then speak that truth, and then fight for that truth. So that is the number one thing you can do. So if you're feeling frustrated, feeling like there's nothing you can do, absolutely, I'm telling you right now, you can do this. We will equip you. We give you everything for free. So go to constitutioncoach.com today, get signed up, start a class this week. And as a result of that, you'll start to build a group of patriots in your community that can influence the school board elections, which will then allow you to stop the Marxist teaching in the local schools. Because even if you pull your kids out of the public schools, which I absolutely think you should, but even if you do that, you need to still influence what happens in the local public schools, because most kids are still going to go through that indoctrination system. And so even if they're not indoctrinating at your local school, even if they somehow are doing a good job, you can be part of the influence so that they get better textbooks and so that they're not doing any of this 1619 project junk. That's now on over 5,000 campuses across the country. Complete and total lies about who America is being taught to our children not in colleges. I'm talking about in elementary schools. Okay, so that local class that you do will be the way that you can then influence what's happening in the school board elections, in the city council elections, in the commissioner elections. And then you can have some say on stopping the COVID fascism and have some say on who then the candidates are going to be for state rep and state senator and then eventually Congress. So those things are vitally, vitally important, but it all begins with having your own local class so that you start getting people interested in this, educated, inspired, and frankly, give them some hope. Let them see that we can win, that there are ways to push back in a peaceful way and actually win. I don't think the victories are going to be at the federal level for a while. I think we can take the House of Representatives back in 2022. I think we will take the House of Representatives back in 2022. But I don't think that should be our focus. Our focus needs to be the local elections, winning those school board, city council, county commissioner races. And then the governors. I think Daniel Horowitz is right about this. If you were going to pick whether to really focus on a U.S. Senate race or on a governor's race, the governor race is going to be the most important. The governors are the ones that have had the power and used it wrong in almost every state this year. And we see the difference it makes in what's happening in Florida right now, which is mostly free because of Ron DeSantis leading in a good way, and in South Dakota because of Kristi Noem. So governor's races are going to be huge this next year. So make sure that you're helping to recruit a good candidate. Don't end up with 15, Tea Party patriot type candidates running against the moderate Republican that happens to be an incumbent, splitting all your vote and handing them up. Get smart about this. Be strategic. Get behind somebody that can win. Remember the biblical command for who you choose for your leaders. They got to be able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. They've got to be capable of winning, capable of doing the job. They got to hate bribes and hate the spoils of the personal spoils of being in public office. They got to be honest, and they got to fear God. Look for that in each of those candidates that you support. Okay, I ranted way too long, but I did get to one question. I did cover the 1871 corporation thing. What's another question we can cover?
A lot of questions on sanctuary states, your opinion of where to go.
Yeah, so the sanctuary state movement, sanctuary county movement continues. There have been a few counties that have already created their own declarations across the country. Horowitz and myself and others are still trying to put that together so you have a formal one you can take to your commissioners and your sheriff. And I'm sorry to say I do not have that this week. But that movement is growing, and we've already seen some public servants actually be the ones to say, hey, we want to be that place here. And I really enjoyed, I wish I had it. Actually, I think I do have it. There was a sheriff in New Mexico that sent a letter to the governor basically saying, let's see here. Yeah, here we go. This is so good. It's a New Mexico governor named Sheriff Wood. And he sent a letter to the governor of New Mexico, and here's what it said. This is Sheriff Michael Wood. It says, Madam Governor, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Michael T. Wood, and I am the lawfully elected sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico. I took office January 1st, 2021, so we just got in. So this is the kind of move the ball forward as soon as you get power. It has been brought to my attention that under your authority, government officials have been acting under color of law within the confines of Lincoln County, New Mexico, pursuant to a public health order. It has been reported to me that local businesses have been interrupted and business owners have been threatened with unreasonable fines and threats of imprisonment without having committed any criminal offense. At no time in my 13 days in office have I been personally contacted and made aware of this activity. As a newly elected sheriff, I had hoped to hear from you by now. Please consider this correspondence as immediate cease and desist order issued by the office of the Lincoln County Sheriff until I have been consulted. In short, I have questions and I want answers. I have earned this consideration and my citizens deserve it. How about that? How about 1,000 more of those all across the country? That's what I'm talking about. That's what we need more of. So thank you very much, Sheriff Michael Wood. And if any of you that are on tonight happen to live in Lincoln County, New Mexico, you chose a good sheriff, it looks like to me, and we need more of them like that across the country. Next.
To build upon that, there's a couple of questions just on how a sanctuary city or state is actually legal. How's it different than nullification and what your plan is?
Yeah, so basically a sanctuary county is using the exact same theory that at the state level you can do that is not nullification, it's actually non-participation. So in other words, what you're saying is this law that you've passed on a state level even, in our county, I will not participate in enforcing that. If I'm the sheriff, you're not going to use my deputies to enforce a mask mandate on my folks. And then the next step is a little bit stronger and really requires some civil disobedience, and that is if TABC, Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission, whatever it's called, TABC or some health inspector from the state decides that they're going to go shut down your local restaurant because they're not making everybody wear a mask or they're not, making everybody sit 100 feet apart or whatever they do, then we citizens should go surround that business and just stand there and say, you're not going to close them down, and make them arrest every single one of us and see how far they're willing to go. And if the sheriff is with us and he's saying, you're not going in with my deputies here, we're going to protect this business from your unlawful order that you've dictated, then TABC or the health inspector, whoever, has to make a decision. Are they willing to actually have, force their way in? What are they willing to do? So far, what we've seen in places where that kind of thing happens, they backed off. I know that's uncomfortable. I know people don't, they don't want the conflict, and they'd rather just go home and not have to deal with it. But friends, that's the only way we're going to stop this nonsense. You've got to stand up to it, and it's sometimes going to be painful, and it's going to cost fines, and maybe even go to jail, and maybe lose a business license or whatever it might be. And man, it's just, there's not many that are willing to do that. And unfortunately, just like at my local restaurant the other day, they're basically being the enforcers for Governor Bully Abbott and being his henchmen. And what a shame. What an absolute shame. And so, any local business, if you're willing to stand up to that and say, no, I'm willing to come help you. I'm willing to come spend money eating at your restaurant, and willing to come stand at the front door along with a bunch of other fellow citizens and say, Mr. Health Inspector or Miss Health Inspector, you're not even coming in. Your made-up order is not the law of the land. So I know that's uncomfortable. I know that is something that very few people are going to be willing to do, but maybe the longer this goes on, the more people are going to be willing to do it.
Any opinion on the attempted impeachment of Biden already?
This is the, I'm not related to her, Marjorie something Green, right? The congresswoman from Georgia. She's from Georgia. And her articles of impeachment for Biden. Hey, look, if the things that happened with the Hunter Biden situation actually happened, which, so far I've seen more evidence of that than I have of Donald Trump inciting a riot, and Joe Biden knew about it and benefited from it, then he could be subject to impeachment. We'll see. I mean, I haven't read her articles, to be honest with you. I haven't read what she actually drafted. I heard some interviews where she explained it a little bit, and obviously has no chance of being heard in the House with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, but they've created this environment where impeachment seems to be the go-to weapon of choice in Washington, D.C. And don't forget, they filed articles of impeachment on Donald Trump in 2017. I forget the congressman's name, but the first congressman to file his articles of impeachment, they didn't go anywhere. But so she's basically doing the same thing that they did, with a whole lot more on the table that could very well be impeachable. But I haven't looked at her articles and what she's specifically claiming happened that is an impeachable offense.
A lot of people want to know what restaurant you were at the other day.
These people in Dripping Springs?
I think so. I think Mr. Meckler asked earlier he was on.
It's my favorite restaurant locally. I've had so many wonderful breakfasts, lunches, and dinners there with my kids, with my family, with friends. I've probably taken my daughter on more father-daughter dates there than anywhere else. Had more powwows with my boys than anywhere else. And it's not that the food is just out of this world. It's just that it's, close by, and they've been wonderful people over the years as we've gone there. And they've been turned into tyrants by our government. And it's a shame. It's a shame. The name of the restaurant, the initials are. We did that last week, right? It's El Rey's. It's El Rey's Mexican food restaurant right by my house. So, yeah, very sorry to see them act like this. What was the name of the restaurant we went with the Mecklers where they did not harass us?
Doc's Seafood.
Doc's.
Or Doc's.
Catfish? No, Doc's Fish, Doc's something in
Marble
Falls. Yeah, so go eat
will
at
go back
Marble
there.
Falls. Doc's something. It was good, too. Really good food. Great live music. Yeah, good place to go. Okie dokie. What else?
Are there any actions that can be taken, if we're being fair, when it comes to, quote, inciting violence? Is there any actions to be taken against all those senators that incited violence throughout the year, if they're going to go after Trump like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hypocrisy of, claiming that Trump incited violence at the Capitol by the very people that without question encouraged violence for the last, 7 or 8 months, they should be what's the word I'm looking for? Harassed by us, by the press, by writing letters to them, calling them out in television shows and media appearances, which I've been doing. And then if another member of Congress is willing to have a press conference and file. I forget what that's called because when it's an actual member of Congress, it's not impeachment; it's removal by the body because they actually set their own rules in the House and the Senate for how that would be done, and they're the triers of fact on whether or not to remove them. So they could obviously ask for that, and it's not going to be heard with the Democrats being in charge. But at least it brings attention to it. To some of us would at least know. I find it quite compelling when I hear the montage of clips that Mark Levin and others have put together and played. Michael Knowles had a really good one the other day on Daily Wire. But I mean, it was Kamala Harris, it was Cory Booker, it was Maxine Waters, it was all these Democrats, Nancy Pelosi. Basically saying get in a congressman's face or keep rioting or I don't know why people aren't rioting more. That wasn't the word she used. She used some other word, but. Anyway, they did far more to encourage violence than Donald Trump or any Republican has done. In fact, we have always discouraged violence, and Donald Trump did the same thing. He said peaceful, patriotic, and so yeah. I mean, there might be a way locally to hold those people accountable. I haven't thought through that yet, but it's more going to be a PR battle. There's not going to be any actual teeth to it as long as the Democrats have Congress.
TJ was asking, he thought he'd heard more states have called for a convention than what, for example, you and Mark Meckler state. Is that because there needs to be a unified call? What's the reason for that?
That's a good question, TJ. There were a lot of states that called for a convention for the specific purpose of the Equal Rights Amendment years and years and years ago. There have been other calls for a convention of states for other purposes. What our strategy was from the beginning on this one, 8 years ago, was to have a new call that's very specific to shifting power from the feds back to the states, shifting that balance of power, shutting down these out-of-control federal programs, stopping the duplication. Karen and I were talking about this on our drive to Dallas the other night, and Mark had hit on this on the front porch 2 weeks ago and was spot on in the idea that the founders did not want to duplicate government programs at the state and federal level. So they were very smart about, even in Article 1, Section 9, removing things that the state could do. In Article 1, Section 10, given the Article 1, Section 9 and 10 doing the do's and don'ts of the federal government, but also giving don'ts to the states because you don't want duplicity. And we should start asking our state reps this question. Instead of saying, are you for convention of states? We should say, do you think it's a good idea to have a federal Department of Agriculture and a state Department of Agriculture, or would you rather have control over it here in the state and not be told what to do by a big, huge federal department? Can't we handle that on the state level? I mean, what is the reason for a federal Department of Agriculture? You have a Department of Agriculture in all 50 states, and they can decide what the best policy is for their state. There is no logical reason to have a federal Department of Agriculture. And so same thing goes for education. Why do we need a federal Department of Education? Both of those departments are not authorized by the Constitution. There is no federal authority, no constitutional authority for the feds to have those. So ask your state rep, wouldn't you rather have the power? Wouldn't you? I would rather you make the decision on agriculture policy in the state of Texas than some, Congress make that decision. You are right here in Texas. So you could do that with 15 different departments. And that's what a convention of states would do, is it would wipe out the duplicity. And it would say, let's bring the power back to the states and let them decide. It goes back to the Founding Fathers' philosophy of The states should do everything that's internal, and the feds should do everything that's external. So the only thing the federal government needs to be doing is national defense, dealing with treaties and international agreements. Basically the very few things that are listed in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. That was the model of our federalism. And it pretty much held that way until, the 14th Amendment, specifically to slavery, and then it was used, the 14th Amendment, I think, was in some ways abused to try to force federal policy into all the states. And then, of course, the progressives in the 1920s and 30s got a bunch of Supreme Court decisions that suddenly said it's okay to have a federal minimum wage, federal regulations on meat packing plants, all these things that exponentially grew the federal government, which, by the way, was on the heels of repealing the 17th Amendment. So once you stopped having the states choosing the U.S. senators, you no longer had a check on the federal government. You had the Constitution as a check on them, but if they were willing to ignore it and the Supreme Court willing to help them by misinterpreting, reinterpreting the Constitution to allow them to open those departments and have those new regulations, then there was no check. And so a convention of states is the last check. It's the last check on federal encroachment and power. And so if we could get that convention of states, which I believe we will, then it will give us the chance to say no more federal encroachment outside of the things specifically listed in Article 1, Section 8. Let the states decide on these issues, and that way California can be California, Texas can be Texas, New York can be New York. Each state can live like they want to live. And the federal government will only do those things that only the federal government can do, which means everything that's external, national defense, border, those sorts of things. All of that, boy, that was a long answer to TJ's question, to say there are some who say you could count some of those states that had called for a convention before, but we don't think that's a good idea. We think it should be passed in every state with the same exact language so that the convention is clearly for the one purpose of those three things that Mark talked about last weekend. And so that's the goal. And I think if I remember right, we're at 15 or 16, and we need 34, so need about 18 more. And I believe we'll get there. There's a huge momentum for this now. And there has to be. Look, the Democrats control the federal government, and they will control it for the next 2 years. So it's only going to get more and more out of control. A convention of states is the only way to put the federal government back into its proper box.
Does that call limit them to just those particular items at the convention?
Yes. So here's the thing. The Constitution does not specifically say that the convention would be limited to those things that the states called for. But the states are passing resolutions saying, here's your marching orders to the commissioners that will go to the convention. These are the only things you can do. If you do anything outside of this, we will not approve it and will actually recall you. That's the way the conventions have always been done in the past, and that's the way that most states are adopting their call for the convention, and I think that's the safest bet.
How would you approach talking to local school board members about a lot of the things that Biden put in place and probably will over the next few years if they're just going to respond, well, the president said to do it? What's the approach there to convince them they have the authority not to enforce some of these things?
I think we probably need to get good talking points and white papers out there to people to be able to do that really effectively. But in the meantime, you can say to your school board member, the national government does not set education policy for our local school district. And if we have to say no to the federal dollars that we get in our local school district, it's worth it. Get rid of the federal dollars and allow us to run our schools locally the way that we want. You are far better off as a school district to not have the 6 or 7 or 9% of your budget come from the federal government and then 50% of the strings, especially when those strings mean forcing the school to sign off on letting men go into our daughters' bathrooms, right? Or teaching critical race theory that destroys our people and divides our people, or teaching the 1619 Project. So that's what I would say to that local school board member. You've got a responsibility to make sure that our children are being taught truth. You've got a responsibility to make sure that you're not allowing Marxism to be taught to our children and destroy our country. And you do not have to do everything that Joe Biden says to do in our local school district. He is not the superintendent of our local school district. He has no power over what our local school district does. And these executive orders can be refused. They can be, you don't have to do it. And if they say we're going to take away your federal funding if you don't do it, fine, take away our federal funding, but we're not going to do it.
Great question here when it comes to refusing to wear a mask when you go into a store. How do you push back on that while still being polite, respectful, but trying to give both a good reasoning for your decision not to wear a mask and possibly provide some ammo to the business? Convince them to push back.
Well, first thing I'd say is to Alyssa, so you're in Ken Singer's district. Yeah, the 10 House members that voted for impeachment and any Republicans that support it have to be defeated in this next Republican primary, and I think they will be. Okay, so you were saying, how do you push back at your local business? I mean, let's not forget, we do definitely believe that local business has the right to tell you no, which is why I left the restaurant the other day, even though I didn't want to. I really wanted one of those omelets. They have really good omelets, especially the chorizo, with pico de gallo in it. El Reyes, you do great on that omelet, and I really missed not getting to eat it. But, look, if that's going to be their role, then and they're not going to serve me even though I was already at the table and safely did not kill anybody, that's their choice. So if your local business is absolutely requiring you to wear the mask or they won't let you in, I think, you try to discuss it with them, which is what I try to do with these folks and say, look, what's the real reason for the mask? Or here, it doesn't help any. What's the difference between me walking here? I've heard other people describe it this way as a better way of doing it, is ask them, do you think me wearing my mask from here to the table is actually going to prevent anybody from getting COVID? Do you believe that? And let them answer that. Well, it doesn't matter what I believe. It's our company's policy. Say, okay, well, does your company have any scientific evidence to back up why that is their policy? I have no idea. Well, would your company prefer to not get my business if I'm not willing to do something that I know to be not scientific and you're not able to give me any scientific proof that I'm wrong? Of course, they're not going to know the answer to that either. But what you're trying to do is get them thinking. And right now, most of them aren't going to think. So if you know the business owner, you got a much better chance of saying, hey, let's talk about this. Why are you following these unconstitutional, illegal orders? You don't have to do this. We'll stand with you to say no to this nonsense. Let us get back to life. So.
Is it worth even trying to possibly sit down with a business that you like and try to explain just how much business they would get even if they were to stand up against this?
If you can measure that, it's kind of hard to measure that right now because, even if you say, well, listen, if you'll allow this, we'll eat here all the time or we'll give you more business, it's hard to guarantee that other people will as well. Now, as you start your Constitution classes and you have a band of 20 people, 10 people, whatever it is in your community, y'all can now start going together. You can sign letters together and take them to local businesses and say, here's what the science actually says. Here's why we don't believe it's necessary to wear a mask. We respect your right as a business owner to require it, but as long as you do, we're not going to give you business. We would love to patronize your business if you will once again let us make decisions about our health when we know that we are not putting anyone in your business at risk. Something like that could work.
Do you have any opinion on the whole Great Reset plan? Did you discuss that on Wall Builders Live? One listener was mentioning that.
Say that again?
Did you discuss the Economic Forum's Great Reset plan on Wall Builders Live? Somebody said you were discussing that on there.
Yes. Well, I wasn't, but Glenn Beck was. We had Glenn Beck on as a guest Wednesday, and he was talking about it.
Do you have any comments on that, or that was just Beck that was commenting on that?
No, there's no doubt. That those who want us to be a Marxist socialist country are taking advantage of COVID to do a great reset. And if you go back to, I believe it was in May, I did a 1-hour webinar, and I walked through the warnings. I said, here's what they're already saying they hope to accomplish by the end of COVID. And it was all about this great reset. And they televised it. They said, we're going to change the way we vote. We're going to change the way people think about the proper role of government. We're going to change the way people think about family. We're going to change the way people think about the free market. And we're going to change what people think about the experts. Once again, the experts are going to be listened to and basically be the high priest of everything. So we warned about this back at the very beginning because the other side said, this is what we're going to do. And so that was what I was really upset about. It was everybody was just laying down and saying, yeah, we'll do whatever out of fear, was that I knew the other side was going to do this and use that power to radically change what our nation is. So Beck's right. I mean, this Great Reset is real. I mean, they are definitely trying to radically change what America looks like and use COVID to do it. And they're winning. They're accomplishing it. I mean, let's be blunt about where we are. Let's assess the patient so we can fix it. So the only way we're going to change it on a short-term level, we're not going to change it nationally. We have to change it at the local level. And we got to find some places we can put emphasis and effort and say these are counties that are safe. This is what it looks like to be free again. Hopefully then end up with a few states that are like that. And eventually those become the beacons and the cities on a hill that others will look to. And then while we're doing that, we have to push for a convention of states. Because if we don't shift the power back from the feds to the states, we're going to become one big national socialist country. I mean, that's just where it's headed. And the only way to stop that at this point on a national level is a convention of states. The feds have no say. We have all the power at the state level if we'll use it. Brings me back full circle to what I started with tonight. Why is the left winning? Because they use power when they get it. Whether they get it legally or by hook or by crook, they use it to move their agenda forward, and they put in the hard work to get there. If we want to win, we've got to get the power, which we have through the Convention of States. It's right there in the Constitution. It's a tool everybody knows is there, but we don't use it. And that means hard work. It's going to take some sweat equity to get 34 states to call for the convention. And then it's going to take some sweat equity to get 38 states to ratify the amendments that would be proposed at that convention. So this is going to take a lot of work. This is not going to be easy, but it's well worth it. Unless you want to live in tyranny, unless you want to live under all the laws that Biden and Harris can come up with, then you better start looking to the one solution that actually is big enough to solve those problems. I don't know of any other solution that will actually work. If you've got one, I'm more than willing to listen. But that's the only way long term we can save the republic, not actually split and have a bloody civil war, but more importantly, not just save the republic and live under socialism in the republic, but save the republic and preserve freedom in certain areas of the country. I don't think we'll save freedom for the whole nation. I think California and some of these states, if the church doesn't wake up and push back enough in those states, they will become complete socialist bastions. And the people that want to live in freedom will leave those states and come to other states. But I haven't given up. I haven't gotten there yet. I just think that's where it could go if the church doesn't speak up. The reason we're pushing our biblical citizenship in modern America class is because if the church woke up and the church actually was salt and light, even in places like California, we would win. There's enough people in churches in California for us to win those elections. The problem is you have very few of those churches that are teaching their flock to be biblical citizens. Most of those churches don't apply Scripture to life. They don't actually talk about how society should work and how to vote and those kind of things. So that's why they're in the mess that they're in. Wow, things are flying off the wall at me. All right, it's getting close to 9 o'clock. Anything else in there we definitely should cover?
One quick comment. A couple people are asking about HR 5717, which is the new omnibus firearms restriction bill. I don't know if you've read it specifically. I read it a little bit, so we don't have to comment much on it, but a lot of people are asking about it. In summary, it's terrible. It's everything from you have to have a license to purchase and all the crazy stuff they've been trying to get passed for a while, but maybe we can do more research on it and have another,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's awful. It's exactly what Beto O'Rourke dreamed of.
Say which one he's talking about.
Oh, it's 57, right? HR
5717.
HR 5717. It basically throws in all of the gun control, anti-Second Amendment things that they've wanted to do for years. They told us they were going to do this. We knew this was coming. So I do think there's a chance we can defeat it in the House and the Senate because there's a few of those Democrats that they know that would be their death knell back home. So, a Manchin is going to have a very hard time voting for that. A few others in the same boat. So I do think it's awful, and I think we should be, ready to work very hard against it. But I also think we have a good chance of beating it if we really do marshal our resources on it.
One last question. Question before we head out here, because I think the storm is about to hit us pretty hard here. It feels like
Somebody thought this was a green screen. Y'all see that? Yeah. Wait, just so y'all know, where is the poker?
Mom, I think it's next to you. Yeah, there you go.
It's a real fire. Look at this.
Nicely done. Validity proven.
Validity proven. This
It-
is not fake news behind me.
Last question is a little off topic from what we've discussed, but I do think it plays an important part now, knowing what's coming under the Biden plans. How do we move the ball forward on possibly a flat tax in the future, or just any real ground on the crazy excessive taxation system we have right now?
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on the whole tax thing and the evil debt that we are. And I say it's evil because we're stealing from our children and grandchildren, and that's evil. In fact, Karen and I were we were coming back the other night, maybe because it was like 2 a.m. We're driving back from Dallas, and we're walking through this together, and we're going, what are we missing? This seems so simple. It's like, because
it's too simple.
Yeah, because basically what we're saying is, look, if you have a convention of states and you amend the Constitution to clarify the original purpose of the federal government being small compared to the states, you get rid of all those federal departments they shouldn't be doing in the first place and let the states do their own thing with agriculture, with education. Hey, buddy, come on out. And all of those things. If you did that, think of the billions of dollars you're going to save, all right? Billions every year. And you get rid of all of that harassment of the American people on so many different issues and levels. So then the economy churns better, which means you get more tax revenue at the federal level. At any rate, if you were able to wipe out the largesse of all of those programs, and including welfare, I mean, there is no reason to have, and the founders, there is nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the welfare programs that we have. We should not be doing anything with housing. There shouldn't be food stamps at the federal level. None. All of that should be at the state level. And if you want more of those giveaway programs, then you move to a state that has them. And if you want your state to not have those, then that's your choice as a state. It is silly that we do that at the federal level. Just ridiculous. Because there's no accountability. It's too big. It's the fraud every year in Medicare and the food stamp program and everything else is just breaking the bank. Anyway, Convention of States. You stop doing all those things at the federal level. You bring it back to the state level, which means your state budgets are going to increase. There's no doubt about that, but the trade-off will be well worth it. And then you say, okay, but the taxation at the federal level will stay at that level for 10 years to pay down all of the debt that has been accumulated over the years, or something to that effect. So you get rid of a huge portion of the federal budget, but you keep the taxes the same so that you can get rid of the debt. So that, I mean, I know that sounds simple. I know I'm not in Congress, and some congressman's going to email me and say, "Oh, Rick, you're so foolish. It's so much more complicated than that, and you just don't understand." But it's really not. It's no different than your family budget. The problem is you don't have the political will at the federal level to do it, so we've got to do it at the state level. And I think our state reps do have the political will to do it. I think they will do it out of selfishness. They will do it because they want the power in the states and not at the federal government. And that goes for not just red states, but some of those purple states. Their self-interest will push them in the same direction. But I would support a flat tax over the current progressive tax. My preference is sales tax, have a national sales tax and no income tax whatsoever, because I think income tax is completely immoral. But I think politically a flat income tax is the most likely to potentially be adopted. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing. I don't know if you touched on the campus and that we are still progressing on that and how we are honing down to a few counties and how we're choosing the county we want to end up at, because I know a lot of people are asking,
yeah,
where are we going to end up?
Yeah, quick update on that. We are narrowing down the counties in Texas where we will make our stand and be not only our family be living, but also building our campus for the Torch of Freedom Foundation, the place where we will train young people for a year. They'll be able to come and do a gap year program with us and study leadership and Constitution and all of those things, but also train Constitution coaches. It's where we'll have our mock-up of Independence Hall and all kinds of other cool stuff. I mean, it's a phenomenal. We've already got plans being drawn up. It's a phenomenal campus. And we're narrowing it down. We started with 10 counties around Texas. We're looking at the population in the county. We're looking at its proximity, how far away it would be from the Texas Capitol. We're looking at how the county voted for Trump, because that's an indicator of where people are in their thinking. We're looking at the basic R factor in that county, because that's an indicator. We're looking at what their leaders did during COVID, and there's very few, even in Texas, where the sheriffs and the county commissioners and others took a good stand. Most of them fell for the intimidation factor from Abbott. Once again, Abbott's fault more than anybody's, but they fell for it. So we're looking at all that, and we're getting close. We're getting close. So stay tuned, and already start thinking about when you'll make your first visit to the Torch of Freedom Foundation campus, and start thinking about how much you can donate on a monthly basis to help us get that campus built, because it's going to take a lot of money to build this campus. What else?
I think we're set. Any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts are, don't give up. I mean, I know it's ugly out there, but you know what? We are far better off today than Christians were 2,000 years ago. And, Kirk Cameron mentions that in our first episode of Biblical Citizenship in Modern America, and I think he's right. And I think it was wise of him to say that. I think we need to recognize that we have a very determined enemy in the left, and I say enemy. I mean, the leftists that want to destroy America. Marxism is the enemy of freedom. Marxism is the enemy of a free market, and so they are going to fight tooth and nail. They're not going to just back off because we win a few elections. You got to steel yourself for this. You got to get the mental backbone, what's the word I'm looking for? The mental strength to say, I realize what I'm up against, and I'm willing, and I'm ready, and I'm not going to cower down, and know that we're in this for years. This is going to be a generational fight. Welcome to the fight. We're glad to have you. Now start donating, start spending your time. I've been saying 2 hours a week was all I was asking of people. I think if we're going to win, you got to do more than that. You got to have the 2 hours where you host a class in your living room, and then plan on a couple of more hours of actually writing letters to local people, going and testifying at committees and things like that. But be prepared to invest a few hours a week, a few percentage points of your income, and be willing to continue to speak truth. That's the magic right there. Lives, fortune, sacred honor. Every one of us got to be prepared to do that, and then go to sleep at night knowing you did your duty, and the results are up to God. I'm comfortable with that, and I hope that we win. I believe we can win, but that's not the determining factor. We've got to go into this saying we're going to fight for freedom no matter the outcome, and have the same attitude that the founders had when they pledged their lives, fortune, sacred honor. So that's my approach. I hope you're willing to do that as well. We'll do our best to keep commenting and informing you on what's happening in Washington, D.C. and around the country, and hopefully you'll be able to build a band of brothers in your local community, that folks that you can get together with. Okay, that's it. All right, God bless y'all. Have a fantastic week. Thanks for staying with me tonight. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for so many comments. Wow, my goodness, we had so many good comments tonight. And be sure and share this. As soon as we sign off tonight, please share it. I'm shocked we're still on Facebook. We'll upload this to Rumble as soon as we can. And then, if you would share it on Facebook, if you're watching this later as a recording, then also please share the link on Rumble. It's the only way we're getting the word out to folks. All right, God bless you guys. Have a good night.